I'll never forget almost a decade ago when I had one of my first big, hard conversations as a leader. And I had to meet with one of my team members to talk about issues with their performance. And the worst part was that I really liked this person. I had all these worst case scenarios just running through my mind. I was so anxious leading up to the meeting. I couldn't sleep the night before. No one taught me how to have difficult conversations like this. I had no idea what to say or how to say it. I just felt like I was winging it. In the early days of my leadership, I definitely made all the mistakes you can imagine. But since then, I've had quite literally hundreds of these hard conversations. And not just performance issues. I'm talking about pretty much everything under the sun. We'll get into all of that in just a minute because there are a lot of different kinds of conversations that are hard for all sorts of different reasons. Here's the ultimate reality. Every leader faces hard conversations that can make or break their team. And quite frankly, if you don't know what you're doing, you can really screw things up and make a big mess. But with the right principles and strategies, you can actually turn hard conversations into positive experiences that lead to a healthier culture and a stronger, faster growing team. By the end of this episode, you should have a rock solid strategy to take on pretty much any hard conversation with confidence. Before we jump in, if you're new to this leadership community, I just want to say a big welcome. I'm Zach. I've been a leader in the social sector for many years. After finishing graduate school, I decided to lean into studying leadership, not only because I'm in leadership, but because I'm just fascinated by the subject, which is why I started this channel, to be a student of leadership. I just love researching this stuff. And hopefully I can serve amazing people like you along the way who are also looking to grow in your leadership. Every week I release new content designed with you in mind. And if you find value in today's episode, it would just mean so much to me if you would consider liking and subscribing, or if you're listening via podcast, rating and reviewing is such a simple way to show your support. If you have any questions or insights, please feel free to hop in the comments and share them with all of us. And I just want to say thank you so much for being an active part of this community. I never take it for granted. All right, let's dive into today's content. Here's how we're going to approach this, all right? First, I'm going to address 5 of the most common hard conversations that you're going to have in leadership, or that you've probably already experienced if you're in leadership already. And then I'm going to share 5 principles to help us navigate them. Okay, let's begin by looking at the 5 different conversations we need to prepare for. Conversation 1 is conflict. I'm sure you saw this coming. I know. We can all collectively groan together. The reality of leadership is that you have to deal with a lot of conflict. I mean, if there are people involved, you can count on there being conflict involved. Feelings get hurt, frustrations can boil, you can have different opinions on matters that can lead to conflict. And as the leader, you get to deal with all of it. It's wonderful. Here's the second type of conversation you need to have. Performance issues. I already alluded to this, but it could be showing up late, it could be missed deadlines, it could be poor productivity, poor quality work, it could be a bad attitude, it could be policy violations. I mean, the list is endless. When a team member is having work performance issues, you're the one who has to sit down with them and get them back on track. This is especially hard for non-confrontational type people. It can be intimidating to deliver corrective feedback to team members. All right, the third conversation is firing. I know, it's like the dreaded conversation. Whether it's mass layoffs or it's personal one-on-one layoffs, it all just sucks. I had a buddy recently who was told he had to lay off an entire department and he was just a shell of himself. I mean, how do you look someone in the eyes and fire them? And what if they have a family they're supporting? What if they're a friend? Do you know how to have that kind of conversation? That's a hard one. Here's the fourth conversation: tragedy and trials. Over the years, I've had to show up for people who experience debilitating injuries, cancer diagnosis, chronic depression and anxiety, people who have lost a loved one, parents who have had a miscarriage. I mean, tragedies just strike all the time and it's heartbreaking. Are you prepared to handle that? Do you know how to have those kinds of conversations? A leader should know how to walk through that with people. Okay, here's the last one: change. This can be a really hard one for leaders to navigate. Change can be good, but oftentimes change sparks fear and resentment and frustration and stress in people. What if your company gets bought out and everyone is worrying about their job security? Or what if the market is changing and it's going to create a lot of stress on your team to try to adapt to that? Or what if someone's role has to change and you know they might not like it. Do you know how to have that kind of conversation? That's a hard one. Well, if I just raised your blood pressure a bit, you're in the right place because I'm going to try to take some of the stress out of this, some of the anxiety and discomfort, and hopefully we're going to get to the bottom of this. I know, these are really difficult conversations to have, but the principles we'll look at in just a minute can really help you navigate them. Focusing on principles, in my opinion, is more powerful than focusing on practices. As you know, every conversation is just going to be different. You're dealing with different situations, different people, different problems, different personalities. The context is always changing and always unique. And so these 5 principles are pretty much all you need to have every single type of conversation with confidence and success. And so let's turn to those now. I think this is going to be really helpful. Let me give you the first one. The first principle is ask and listen. This is such a simple yet powerful principle in hard conversations of all kinds. First, knowing what to say in these conversations is often one of the biggest stress points for people. The truth is, you shouldn't be saying a lot of things. You just need to say the right things. So, start with questions and then shut up and just listen. And I mean, really listen. Don't formulate your response just yet. Don't interrupt or get distracted. Be an engaged listener. Take in the information, the emotion, the body language. And if there's a pause in the conversation or they finish answering the last question, ask another question just to encourage them to keep sharing as much as they possibly can. By letting them talk while you listen, you're going to get a better understanding of just everything going on, the entire context, and that's really going to serve you. This also helps you avoid speaking out of ignorance, which I'm sure you don't want to do. And it also does another important thing. It makes the person or the people involved feel seen, feel heard, feel understood. And that is huge. Hard conversations don't go very well if people are misunderstood. That's why this is such an important principle for navigating hard conversations. Okay, here's principle number 2. Principle 2 is to show empathy. Once you've listened thoroughly and developed an understanding of things, you have a great opportunity to show empathy. And this is critical. I'm going to be 100% transparent that this is the hardest principle for me personally. I have to work really hard at showing empathy because I'm not a naturally empathetic person. You can ask my wife about that. She might have a thing or two to say about that. I'm more of a suck it up and move on kind of person. But that's just not how you handle most hard conversations. 99.9% of the time, you've got to show a certain degree of empathy. And let's be clear about what empathy really is, because a lot of people confuse it with sympathy, and there's a difference. The real meaning of empathy is the ability to understand, to share, and feel another person's emotions and perspective by essentially stepping into their shoes. If listening is the key to making people feel seen and understood, empathy is the key to making them feel connected to you. And to be clear, empathy has to go beyond just merely recognizing feelings. It's about validating them. It's about fostering a supportive response. Now, I've noticed that this is intuitive to some people, and to others, like me, it can be really foreign and challenging. In any case, you've got to show empathy. Hard conversations aren't quite as hard if you establish a strong connection. Here's the third principle. Be honest and be clear. At this point, you've listened, you've responded with empathy. Now it's time for some honesty. This is where you're really getting into what's making the conversation so difficult in the first place. This is where you talk through the conflict. You communicate, that they're being let go. You bring up the performance issues. You talk through the trials that they're going through, or you're communicating the changes that are about to transpire. In other words, you're getting into the honest and uncomfortable things. Now, a common mistake many leaders make is to water down what needs to be said to avoid things feeling uncomfortable. And let me tell you something, you can't do that. You can't. You've got to have the courage to say what needs to be said. This is the time where it needs to happen. You can't dance around the point or sugarcoat anything. And for some reason, people think it can be unkind or insensitive to be honest. Do you know what the opposite of honesty is? It's dishonesty. deception, lying, hypocrisy. Does that sound kind to you? No. You've got to be honest. And not only that, but you also have to be clear. Clarity brings understanding and confidence. A lack of clarity brings confusion and doubt. So be honest, be clear. Now, this could certainly lead to feelings of hurt, defensiveness, or discouragement, but that's where the fourth principle comes in, which is encouragement. So we've listened, shown empathy, we've been honest and clear. This is a good time to share some encouragement. Encouragement is recognizing the good in the situation or the good in the person. In my mind, it's unfair to only recognize the negative and ignore the positive. Now, I should clarify that this isn't always the case. For instance, if I'm with a family mourning the grief of a loved one, it's not always appropriate to look for something positive. No, you need to let them grieve. But you can still encourage in other ways. You can hug them, you can hold their hand, you can just sit in silence with them. At the end of the day, encouragement just needs to be authentic and sincere, both for the people involved and the context of the situation. It can't be contrived, it can't be forced. Encouragement is such an important part of handling all of these hard conversations that we face in leadership. Now, let's hit the fifth principle, which is be a servant. This principle centers around demonstrating humility and demonstrating love. It's a posture that you take on. A great question to ask. And I usually say it at the end of a hard conversation. I'll say, how can I serve you? Do you see how disarming and loving that feels? Now, you can't just say it. You need to actually mean it. How can I serve you? Even in the most intense moments of fear and frustration and grief and confusion, that one question can cut through the noise and it can bring this peace and unity and healing and comfort. How can I serve you? It's so powerful. Listen, if you apply these 5 principles, you will have everything you need to navigate even the most challenging circumstances. Keep in mind that all of the principles are just that, they're principles. So don't turn this into some formula. That's just going to feel insincere and it won't work. But look, I also get that some of you might have been fishing for something practical. So let me give you a bonus round of quick, practical tips that you might find valuable. This is just stuff that I found really helpful to me personally. Might have picked it up from a mentor or a book, but it works. And I'm just going to rapid fire them at you. All right? Ready? Tip 1 is conflict is cancer. Address it immediately. Do not let conflict fester. It will continue to grow and it will kill you and your organization. Deal with it swiftly. The second tip is hire slowly and fire quickly. I got this advice from my dad. I don't know what else to say. It's good advice and it can save you from having to have a hard conversation in the first place. The third tip, do not have any of these hard conversations over text or email, as tempting as it is. No, do not do this. There are almost no exceptions to this rule, and I don't even want to share the exceptions because I don't want you trying to justify doing this. I know it seems easier, but that's because it's passive, and you don't want to be passive about these things. I would even advise you to avoid phone calls for hard conversations. These methods are hard to read emotionally. There's zero body language to read, and it's almost impossible to build any kind of connection in that way. It just doesn't work. Don't do it. Tip number 4, say less, God bless. Tip number 5, find a mentor. When it comes to hard conversations, it's so much better to learn from a mentor than to learn through trial and error. This is the main reason I launched my mentorship program not too long ago. There are some things that are just difficult to navigate in a video or a book. Sometimes you just need that hands-on mentoring to navigate nuances of leadership. Hard conversations are certainly at the top of the list of things I would recommend mentoring for. I'm not going to say a whole lot more on that, honestly, but if you're interested, I'll make sure to throw a link in the description of this episode. I'd be happy to work with you in a one-on-one capacity, but just know that mentoring slots are application only, and I can only accept a handful of individuals. But man, it's definitely a great step to take if you're dealing with just toxic work environment or difficult people. Those are hard things to navigate. And oftentimes you really just need someone on the outside able to just help work through those things. So feel free to take advantage of that. Here's tip number 6, lead with service. If there's one principle I would advise you to lead with, it's service. In other words, lead with love. At the end of the day, if you put this principle first, you can walk away from that hard conversation knowing that you did the right thing. You can walk away knowing that you did right by that person, that you did right by that situation. No matter the outcome, you can feel confident. And listen, I've had outcomes that I don't like, but I still leave the conversation feeling 100% at peace with that because I know how I handled it. And in many ways, that's just why these principles work. Okay, I have one final tip for you. And, I swear by this one, and that's prayer. You may not be a person of faith. That's okay. I'm still your friend. But this is it's the best advice I can offer you for handling hard conversations. As a Christian leader, this is my secret weapon. I pray before, during, after my hard conversations. I'll even be praying while I'm listening to the person talk, especially if they bring something up that I just wasn't prepared for. I just lead with prayer. You partner prayer with all of these principles? Are you kidding me? Man, you just won't struggle with these things anymore. Well, before you leave, I have a few book recommendations on this topic of hard conversations that you might want to look into. These aren't affiliate links, by the way. They're just honest recommendations that I personally found helpful. If you're really trying to get better in this category of dealing with hard conversations like this, these are great books to pick up. The first one is called Boundaries by Dr. Henry Cloud and Dr. John Townsend. A second one is I Hear You by Michael Sorensen. This one really helped me with listening and empathy, so I found that really valuable in this particular topic. And look, if you want even more recommendations, there's so many. I actually put together an entire leadership resource list with over 50 additional recommendations, just broken down into different categories like self-leadership, leading others, organizational leadership. You get the idea. And it's really just designed to help you have a playbook through the week. I kind of designed it that way so that we could spark conversation here, and then you have something during the week that you can do to help move the ball down the field. So hopefully that serves you. I'll put that in the description as well. All right, well, keep fighting the good fight. And hey, if you like this episode, I think you're gonna like this episode right here where we discuss 7 skills that great leaders can't live without. Oh, it's a really fun and valuable conversation. I'll see you over there.